tell us what your relationship. Oh,
that's me. Sorry, Laurie. I found my
you
record
found the
button.
record button. So yeah, we're typing into the chat as folks are arriving. And the third item, if you could please share, is what's your relationship to CSR? Are you on the business side, where you're somebody who's looking to implement a CSR program, or are you more on the social cause side, where you would be, say, the beneficiary of CSR efforts, or maybe you're both, and maybe it's neither. But definitely want to hear from folks in the chat as we give a couple more minutes for registrants to arrive. I think in the end we had about 17 folks saying they were coming, so we're on the low side of the ratio, but we'll see. Okay, well, we are going to just soldier on here. The answers for me, I'm Laurie Mcneil. I'm the director of the Civic Hacker Network, and welcome. I'm big fan of Code for America. There's no brigades where I'm at, but that's part of the whole reason for the Civic Hacker Network. But thank you for being here. Good to see you here, Rachel. And I am logging on from actually Southern California today. Normally I am in far Northern California in Redding, so I'm about 10 hours drive away from home. But my relationship to this topic, I would say, is my answer would be both. And I'll say more about that later on. But the next thing that I want to do is introduce you to the starring presenter that we have for this event today. So one of the primary activities of the Civic Hacker Network is to produce our signature event, which is the Civic Hacker Summit. And that's a virtual online conference that they started in 2017, long before these things were like public health necessities. And if you participated in the one we held back in November, you may recall being introduced to Rich Yap. He's the founder and CEO of a platform called Carmelize and our co-host of today's webinar. Rich came to start Carmelize after spending over 30 years in consulting, technology, and software industry. And when Rich and I first connected, Carmelize was on the path to becoming a 501c3 nonprofit, but now they're a public benefit corporation. And just a little US Supreme Court humor here, public benefit corporations are my favorite people. So they're the same type of entity as like Patagonia and Ben & Jerry's. You may be aware of those two notable examples. And it means that they legally have social or environmental public good, purpose, and not just shareholder profit maximization as the core of their business. And there's an interesting plot twist in how he went from A to B with his corporate structure. And so I will let him tell that if he wants to share that story. So now we're on top of things with the behind the scenes shuffle of changing presenters. But while I get ready to hand it over to Rich, Would love to hear from you all from this, small poll. I'll play along too so that we have more guesses. What type of activity or action? Oh, Sebastian, I didn't say hello to you. Hello. Sorry. I've got to minimize grid over here. So what type of activity or action do you think most people prefer to engage in when they're supporting their favorite social cause? And you can, put it in the chat, or we're small, you can just shout it out like me. I would normally pick like donate because that's what I'm exposed to the most.
You definitely get a lot of emails asking you to donate.
Yeah, that's for sure. What do people prefer to do? And, what do you think it would be?
Volunteer, okay.
Volunteering. I guess every time I put up the chat, it probably blocks this for you guys.
Min's going to say he's going to sling some code.
Sling some code, right on. Yep. All right, so I will hand it over to you, Rich, at this time.
All right. Thanks, Laurie, and thanks all for joining us on this as well too. So this is a bit of a trick question. When we were doing some research on what we wanted Caramelize to be, we wanted to make sure that we're not a solution looking for a problem, but we're trying to understand what the problem is, right? So when we did some research around social causes and interests, the two things that usually come to mind is volunteering and donating. I mean, that's just kind of human nature, right? But if you dig into the data, it actually goes. I'm going to advance the screen here. This is what we found. So there's a nonprofit called the Case Foundation, and they've stopped doing this since they did this for 10 years in a row. And they produced this thing called the Millennial Impact Report. And what they did was every year they would survey a group of millennials. That's the group of the generation that's coming up. That's going to be, if not already, the largest demographic group in the world, including them and the generation next, which is the Gen Zs. And they asked them, what are the things that you actually want to do when you're passionate about social causes? And the answers are here on the right. So voting is number one, signing a petition, posting something on social media, changing buying habits, contact political representative. You notice donating is number 7 and volunteering is number 10. So I'm not here to suggest that people stop donating or stop volunteering, right? But if you want to try and engage people and energize people, you got to have other options to meet them where their interest lies. So when we took a look at this list, we said, okay, what are we going to do as Caramelize? And we looked at voting. I think there's a lot of energy around voting already. Signing petitions, you guys might be familiar with Move On and Change.org. And, I don't think we have a better solution than that. Number 3 was posting on social media. We certainly don't have a better solution than Facebook and Instagram that's out there already, nor do we think we need another social media platform. So we came to number 4, which is change buying habits, and thought, well, maybe there's something there for us. So I started this company with my co-founder called Caramelize. And our purpose, our mission is to spread good karma by supporting socially responsible businesses. And part of that is helping people change their buying habits so they can buy from companies that stand for the social causes that they are also interested in. Okay, so that's what Caramelize is. I'll spend the next few minutes and slides here just giving you a taste of what that platform is, and then we'll dive into the data that we've collected and what we can learn from that data that we've collected so far. Oops. All right, so Caramelize, we're a worldwide platform. The only thing restriction-wise is we're currently only in English, but our platform works anywhere around the world. These are the top cities that we're in right now in terms of businesses that are represented in Caramelize. We're in, at latest count, 550 plus different cities around the world. and we have 1,900 listings. We started this last summer, and since then we've grown to 1,900 listings, and they're all crowdsourced. Here's an idea of what you get when you use Caramelize. This is a web version. We also have a mobile app version on Apple and Android. But there's multiple ways to search, and by different social causes or geo and other ways. But at some point in time, you get a list that looks like this, and we wanted this to be as visual as possible. So you see there's actually a picture that's taken from the business itself. If you look in, it might be a little bit small here, but for each business, you at least get a taste of, okay, who are they? The little text in red is a short description of what is the social cause they stand for. So for example, if I go through this list here, this Mad Roaster in Singapore provides jobs for refugees. Okay, the Forager Project is an organic food company. They only produce food from sustainably sourced sources, suppliers. Tabla Indian is a restaurant in Florida. So what they do is they provide on the side cooking classes. And as part of these cooking classes that they provide for a fee, they take those fees and they put it into a fund that in turn supports education for people who want to get into the restaurant business to go to culinary school. So these examples of things that these companies do to advance or support social causes that they're interested in. One more view is if you click into any one of these things, you get this is the lowest level detail of a business, right? So this one is actually in Austin, Texas. It's called Try Hard Coffee Roasters. On the left side here in white, you'll see there's a description about the business, some logistics about their websites, how to find them geographically, a map and so forth. But there's also a picture here you see of these are actually the owners. They're not customers. These are the owners, right? So they're not your typical Fortune 500 people. This is Gabrielle, Ray, and John, and they own this coffee shop. What they do is, in addition to running the coffee shop, they take part of their profits and they subsidize and get another fund for healthcare for low-income musicians. If you guys are familiar, Austin is a big, live music city. And there's, I presume, struggling musicians there, and you want to help those struggling musicians get better healthcare, and that's what they do. Okay. Any questions so far? Good. Okay. So here's a field report. Now that we've done this, we started last summer. We're up to 1,900 businesses. At the time that we created this deck about a month ago, we were at 1,500 businesses. So what I'm going to present to you is what's the information, what's the data in those 1,500 businesses, and what can we glean from this data? Okay. So we're going to look at demographics. Who's in this list of 1,500 businesses? Who are they? What are the social causes that they support? Where is the support lacking? And how can we make a difference if we want to try and make this a better picture, close some of those gaps as well too? Okay. Just a couple more quick things. When we talk about socially responsible businesses, there's not a worldwide definition for what socially responsible really is, right? So we started with at least what we could find as a good starting point, which is the Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations. And these are the 17 goals that at least the standard that we have worldwide. Now to this list, we've added some of our own too. So for those in the US, you recall, Black Lives Matter was a big deal a couple of years ago. Hopefully it continues to be a big deal. But from that, we understand that general population people want to support Black-owned businesses. I think that's a good thing. But in addition to that, we said, why do we stop at Black-owned businesses? There are other demographics that other people like to support as well too. So to that list, we added more. And we now have this list that you see, which is our search filters. So in addition to the UN SDGs, you can see on the list here, we've got Black-owned, disability-owned, LGBTQ-owned, minority-owned, Native-owned, veteran-owned, and most popular women-owned businesses as well too. Okay. Hey, Sebastian. You're in,
Are these indices self-declared, or is there any kind of check? Because everyone can, of course, claim something, but
yeah.
how is the check? Is there any check being done on the accuracy of this information provided?
Yeah, it's self-reported, Sebastian. So all our listings are crowdsourced, meaning that somebody tells us about it, we find it on our own, right? We don't go to a published listing of X-owned businesses. And then we do some due diligence. We look at the public information that that business itself says of themselves. And if they say they are Black-owned business, then I take it at face value that they are in fact a Black-owned business, right? Now, if they stay silent about it, we try to be a little bit careful to not assume that what we see with our eyes means they are X, right? So there are many that actually are explicit about, okay, we're proud to be a woman-owned business. Some of them don't say anything, but you look and say, who are the owners? And there they are, right? And those are a little bit more cut and dry. Others like LGBT, we don't make any assumptions on that unless they flat out say that's who they are and that's who they represent. Veteran owned is the same thing, right? If they're the veteran, then that it becomes pretty clear.
Yeah, and sorry, I didn't want to fall into that trap. It was not primarily for checking on if on like the community that they belong to, but also for like the social impact that they are saying, that like the processing that they are saying, that like the example you gave from this Austin coffee shop with
Yes.
the healthcare for so yeah, just on that level, the background checks on that, just for accuracy. Okay. Yeah.
It's an interesting question, Sebastian, and we did, my co-founder and I did discuss that at the beginning as well too. So what level of due diligence do we really want to do? And for the most part, I think you'll find that these are small businesses, and they're not sitting on $100 million of revenue, right? And if they claim, hey, I'm going to set aside a certain amount to help these funds or other people who are underserved and underrepresented, we're gonna believe them. Now, if you happen to walk into Austin, you knock on their door and you say, I don't think these guys are really doing that, we be happy to listen to you. There's a contact list in our site that come back and say, hey, I think you need to double check these guys, right? But if they're trying to help out, we give them a little bit more benefit of the doubt and say, let's put you in there. The other thing we don't judge also, which we discussed a lot, was, if somebody's giving 1% of their profit versus 10% or 5%, we don't also say, hey, the person giving 1% is not as good as the person giving 10%, right? We're happy you're giving more than 0%. We don't know what kind of business you're running and your cost profile and all these other issues, but we appreciate the effort that you're putting forth, and therefore we like to see you represented. Okay, thanks for that question, Sebastian. So here's where, so 1,500 businesses, 430 locations. We're now at 1,900 and 560 or so locations, and hopefully we'll continue to grow. So who's in our database? Small businesses, more 80%. Which is a good thing, which I think is a good thing. There's also another 6%, which are nonprofits. So these are nonprofits who actually have something for sale, right? Because back to our beginning, we wanted to help consumers change their buying habits. So you got to have something to buy. If you're a nonprofit and you just put a button that says donate to us, I think there are other platforms that help direct traffic to those. But if you're a nonprofit that so examples of nonprofits, they run a coffee shop of their own, right? Or they have some products that they sell, or they have some classes that they provide for a fee, and they take those funds and help support their own nonprofit. We want to direct customers and consumers to those. So there's about 6% of those in our database that are nonprofits. Then the rest of the 15% are not small businesses and not nonprofits. And then let's see. What are the major social causes that they are aligned with? So human rights, 20%, sustainability, 21%, and equality, 60%. Anyone surprised at this breakdown? Did you think any of these should be higher?
I personally think human rights definitely should be higher. I'm actually really surprised with that number.
Okay. Because
there are so many, social issues around that aspect.
yeah, so the social justice issues, things.
A lot of things like economic development, poverty.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah. I was also surprised that sustainability was as low, right? I mean, you kind of follow the things that you follow, but the whole climate change things, I would think that area would be bigger. Yes, Sebastian?
Yeah, I guess it also depends in how this statistics comes together. Like, so what were the leading questions for people to tick the box here or there? I think that's also important to know, to understand and embrace if there's if there could also be not a misunderstanding, but like people tending to tick here or there, or that would also be interesting how this comes to be.
So
is this for the US only?
No, it's global. It's global. It's all those 1,500 that's in our database. So I'm glad you said something there, Sebastian, which is maybe you didn't intend to say, but you talked about clicking the boxes. We actually the ones clicking the boxes because we have we are applying this breakdown of them, right? So we don't ask the business owners, hey, do you click a certain box or not? We look at what they do. And with our best effort and best guess, we put them in one or more of these boxes, right? So we get credit, but we get the blame if we didn't put them in the right place as well too. This, however, gives you an idea of where we put different people, right? So this might explain some of the data as well too. The first thing to note is if you look at the color scheme, the pink ones, large and to the left, right? The blues, the human rights, mostly in the middle. And the greens kind of spread out. So my takeaway from this is in equality, we got women-owned and we got small businesses. And I already said the small businesses are 80% of our database, right? So it's easy to see how that might make the equality bucket look bigger. Doesn't necessarily mean the sustainability and human rights buckets are not getting attention, but there's a lot easier to be a small business and therefore tick the equality box. So the largest sections here are small businesses, women-owned, gender equality, minority-owned, Black-owned, going left to right. Okay. For human rights, you see jobs, education, healthcare, poverty, hunger. Those are more your slightly more traditional UN SDG things. Rachel, that you just mentioned. And the sustainability, reduce, reuse, and recycle. That's I think we changed some of the names to make it a little bit more consumer friendly. But I think I've done this so long I can't remember what the UN SDG name for that. Responsible consumption and production, I think, was the right one of that. So this, Sebastian.
Yeah, again, but I'm definitely not an expert, so it's not a judging, but also maybe Rachel, you know more. But I'm wondering if not equality, which you had on the slide before, right, as a category, so to say, if it's not even nested within human rights, right? And then obviously when you go into equality and you dig into that, you would have maybe several facets in that again. But again, this is, I think, how we take them determines the facts, right? So it's the question. But for human rights, I mean, they are clearly listed out, and I think it starts with we are all free and equal. So that's where I'm assuming that equality is a part of human rights. Where as to where this former slide and the cake slide is maybe a little bit it provokes misunderstandings perhaps, and
I can see this as well, Sebastian. We did go back and forth a little bit on how do we break things down. And this is where we ended it. It may not be the best one or the right one, is the one we started with. Our intention is to use this for a while and see, hey, if this gets confusing or leads to more misunderstanding, I'm definitely open to redoing it a different way. for now, this is the way we have, and we're approaching 8 months, 9 months of running and collecting this data. But your point's well taken. I understand that. Okay, so move on. Click the slide before I move on. Okay, so if you like data, this is the slide for you. If you don't like data, then you can go get a cup of coffee and come back in a few minutes. But this is the slide that we're trying to determine for the largest demographic groups, which you see across the top here, the women-owned, minority-owned, and Black-owned. Those are the biggest groups in our database. For these biggest groups, how are they doing in terms of all the available social causes that they can choose to help and support? Are they doing their part to support these social causes? Are they ignoring these social causes, or doing more than they are expected to do these social causes? And the way we determine this is look at the proportion of that group relative to the entire group. Okay, so bear with me for a while here. On the bottom, you see all the different social causes from left to right. On the left-hand side, the y-axis, you see a percentage. So 100% means you are doing exactly what we expect you to do. Okay, if you are and we look at women-owned, right? So if you're a women-owned business, and let's say we know you're about 50% of the population, right? So if you're 50% of the population, we expect that in every social cause, at least half of those would be picked by women-owned business. So we take hunger. How many businesses are supporting hunger? Half of them ought to be women-owned. If that's true, then you're in the 100% line. You're doing exactly what we expect you to do based on the numbers that you have. But if less than half of you are supporting hunger, then you're below the line. If you more than half of you are supporting hunger, then you have more women stepping up to choose hunger as a issue, right? So we're trying to do this in order to see where the gaps might be. If you look at the red line, you will see that for the most part, they're around 100% or a little lower than 100%. If you follow this line here, you can see my curve. And then we get to nonprofits, about 50%. So the number of nonprofits we have in a database, not as many of them are women-led as we would expect. And that could be we haven't found them yet, or there are actually not that many women-led nonprofits. We don't know that information yet, but that's what the data tells us. You continue looking at the red line, oceans. Was also another area that's not so good. 50 to 100% is kind of okay, not the greatest. Below 50% is definitely not good. So you follow the red line, you continue that. Green cities, water, public infrastructure, which is a difficult UN SDG to classify. But there's low women representation in that one as well too. And then climate change and on. Yeah, Sebastian.
Just to make sure that I don't misunderstand.
Yeah, sure.
But might it be that in some of these in some businesses, several social causes maybe do not apply so easily?
Yeah. Okay.
Which might cause for that kind of belly.
Yeah. So let me make sure I understand. So for
that perhaps with some business use cases, it's just not so easy. Maybe not even very hard to support specific social causes.
Like if you're very focused on climate change, you might be less inclined to say, I'm going to spend a lot of time on social justice, maybe because they're so far apart.
Or, well, if I go back to this example you gave about this business in Austin, that the coffee shop that then had a very dedicated purpose that it helped with healthcare for a specific group. So that's their decision. And rather than scattering their 1% or whatever their engagement over 10 causes,
Yes.
they focus on one, but
Right.
that, you know, yeah, that
Yeah.
that is more what I'm thinking.
Yeah. No, that I'm sure that happens. Oh, I shouldn't say I sure. I mean, I would expect that happens, that you don't want to scatter your your available resources all over the place, right? So, but I think what we hope to see is this is a snapshot at 1,500 businesses. Our hope, our intention is to do this again, you know, every year and see. And as more data comes in, you hope to see some of those things balance out a little bit more. Now we go, you know, 2, 3, 4 years, and we still see, hey, nobody's supporting hunger. Then that's got to be it's got to be a problem, right? But this is what the data shows. If you look at the minority-owned ones, there's a lot of blue dots, you know, below the 50% line, right? So that's something that we want to be thinking about in terms of minority-owned. And by the way, minority-owned. You know, in the US, a minority might be different than a minority in Europe or minority in Asia, right? So we're trying to keep that in mind as well too. Black owned, a few below the line, but some gigantic ones above the line, right? So let me, just in case you're wondering, let me try and explain these too. So, well, justice probably doesn't need a ton of explanation. I mean, you know, as you might expect, you know, Black Lives Matter and other things, social justice wise, a lot of energy from Black owned businesses trying to, you know, put their 1% or how many percent, Sebastian, into that area that's really close to them. And public infrastructure, so banking is, at least by us, considered a public infrastructure, you know, finance for the general public. And Black-owned banks are a representation of that. So that explains why these are so high. Maybe an outlier, but at least wanted to give you some ideas of why that's the case. Okay. So one or two more views on the data, and then we'll go to some summary and some conclusions on this. So here's a look, and we talked about the demographics that I started out with. We wanted to also have an idea of where do we have not enough representation. And now this is I think Rachel had, this is a US only view. So I took out the US part of those 1,500. If you look at women-owned businesses, 47%, the orange is the data in caramelized, the blue is the demographic data from the US Census. So women are 50% of the US population, and 47% of the business in caramelized are women-owned. So that, you know, I think that's a pretty good, nice alignment. Minority-owned, 22 and 24, so that's also pretty good. Black-owned, 14 and 13. Veterans, 4 and 5, pretty good. LGBTQ-owned, not as good. Now, there's not a formal, this asterisk here, there's not a formal census question around LGBTQ, but you kind of look at different surveys and estimates, and generally comes out somewhere between somewhere around 7%. So that's not that good. Disability-owned, also kind of a big gap. So that's something we want to look at and continue to monitor as we have more data and do this again. And native ones at 1%. Okay. So this is a summary. You know, you can look at all individual lines and so forth. I ask you to just kind of step back a little bit to start and just look at the colors, right? So not a lot of green. Green means you're doing at or above your level, your representation on these social causes. Not a lot of greens, quite a lot of reds. That's my first takeaway. The second takeaway I would look up and down the column of women owned. So green says you're doing better than we expect. Yellow says you're kind of okay, maybe a little bit low, but you know, not so bad. At least you're showing up and supporting these causes. And red says you're not doing much, you know, can't really see you at all, right? So women owned, lots of yellows at least, and some greens. Minority owned, a lot of reds. So besides showing up as a minority-owned business, not a lot of doing beyond that. It's a start, right? I mean, we want to support minority-owned businesses. businesses, but we'd like to see them do more. Again, I'm not trying to judge. This is just where the data is. Black owned, lots of yellows down here under the human rights piece. Helping provide education, helping feed the poor, providing jobs for those who have struggling to find jobs and so forth. So quite a lot more on the human rights side, not a lot on the sustainability and green kind of things. That's the breakdown of the three largest groups. Overall, I look at everybody. I'd say a lot more red than I would like to see. This is where we are. Okay, so if you happen to be a small business owner, or you're talking to a small business owner and you want to know, well, if I want to improve this picture, be myself, what can I do? Here are some ideas. Whoops, went too far. And this is the last slide from me. So here are some ideas on what we can find in our database on what small businesses are doing. Not all businesses, but 80% of them are small. So there's 4 different things, right? One is representation, just showing up. Sebastian, to your point earlier, right? Self-identify if you think that is the thing that you're proud of, right? It's while many of them do self-identify, I'm actually surprised that some of them don't. I look at all their we don't do any we don't try and apply any of our judgment on it. We take what they put on their own public information, right? And some of them have nice stories that say, hey, we're proud, we're women-owned, my mom started this, now I'm continuing, a second generation, female-led, and so forth. And others don't say a single thing at all, which is a surprise, but that's a choice that they make. Maybe they don't know that that's something that consumers would like to see. I don't have a way of knowing. But there are some veterans that don't say anything, and we kind of do a little bit more due diligence. We dig through their feeds and so forth, and buried here and there might be a reference to, yeah, when I served in the Army or when I served in the Air Force, this is what I did. So that applies to all the different demographics. But one thing they can do to help is get listed with us, and we will do some of the due diligence and help you, identify you as that demographic that other people can find you by. The other area here on the top right, contribution. What do these businesses do? So here's some of the most common things, right? I donate a portion of every purchase to a social cause or to a charity, or I give a certain percentage of my profits. That's giving money away. Another way is to not take as much money, right? So I get discounts to people that I think I want to support as well, to frontline workers, first responders. That's very popular when we were in the COVID phase, or teachers or veterans. I give some of my leftover food to food shelters. I know there's a lot of energy around that in the food and restaurant industry as well too. If you're doing that, tell people you're doing that. I think consumers would like to know, and they'd say, I'd go patronize you if I knew that you were doing that. Or set up a foundation for fundraising like the people in Austin, or partner with a nonprofit and find a way to mutually benefit both of them. That's on the contribution side. On the supply chain side, the bottom left, then you do your part as a business with the resources that you're consuming to do that in a sustainable way. So eco-friendly raw materials. We have restaurants and manufacturers that patronize the local suppliers in the region, cut down on transportation and emissions in that way, and also encourage people to grow their own things closer to where it's consumed. Try and reduce their production waste. Try to be carbon neutral or negative. Definitely push the recyclable or compostable products that they both consume and that they sell to other people as well too. And then for those who are retailers, minimal or refillable packaging. Also, I should add also recyclable packaging. And lastly, on the bottom right, in terms of helping the community around you, there's more than several that provide jobs for those groups that have a hard time finding jobs. At-risk youth, refugees, women, survivors of all sorts of things, domestic abuse especially, formerly incarcerated people, people with disabilities. So if you have the ability to do that, and there are some businesses which only hire people with disabilities, which is fantastic for me. Beyond that, give them a job, but give them training, give them education, right? You're hiring them to give them a chance to upskill themselves and get a better future for themselves as well too. Pay fair wages. There's several restaurants that are now doing this thing, which, and I don't know if this is still the case in Germany and Sebastian, but, tipping is very prevalent in the US, and there's definitely some issues with fairness in tipping, and they're getting away with tipping and say, we're going to pay all our staff, front of restaurant and back of restaurant, a fair wage, right? And also giving out the space for community events. So these are ideas that we've seen from the businesses in our database that we put forth as examples of what other small businesses can do. So that's it for me. I'll happy to take questions. So pass it on to Laurie.
Okay, we got our slides together. Had a life of their own for a second. Let me see if yeah. So I didn't want to mess with the controls, so I didn't see Rachel's message, which she said she's impressed with the women-owned businesses. It's definitely pumped up since the pandemic. And thank you, Rich, for sharing that information. I'm actually really excited to see it grow. Like as I'm looking at this, like I just am thinking, gosh, I've got to keep contact with Rich so that we can play with the data together as it develops. It's a case study in crowdsourced information, and as it grows, right, we're going to see that data set mature, and really the questions about categorization, there's iterations that you guys will definitely see in that, in terms of better serving your mission, as well as just creating more accuracy, I guess what could be one way to describe it, depending on how the information is used, because I see a tension between like serving the consumer, what are they looking for, what do they want to support, versus what businesses, what their identities are associated with it versus what their actions are, and representing both of those, and then looking at a check on your platform could be other data from what is known about nonprofit leadership from other folks that research that. Like there's so much that could be understood, and definitely learning where people aren't being represented, or where where folks can do better. And as you're sharing the ideas for folks who are looking at what they can do, I think it ties in nicely with the part that I'm going to go through quickly because for anyone, Rich, for his platform, or others who are looking for direct connection with a socially responsible business, if you're taking on any of these activities and you're not communicating it, you're not showing up as Black owned, or you're not communicating that every time you sell 10 coffees, where you're having supporting the digging of a well somewhere, or whatever it is, that communication becomes key then to being seen from the consumer side and from the person looking to support you in this light. So just want to pause really quickly. Does anybody have any other questions about Rich's information or reflections, or you just want to look at this dark screen for another minute? Okay.
Sebastian just.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I can't see you. Okay, yes.
So I was wondering, I was working for an organization that created a certification scheme for sustainability in the real estate sector. I mean, there's different sustainability certification schemes. Scheme is also a nice word, isn't it? But anyway, so and there was one opportunity where businesses could could kind of disclose certain information about their product. So now we are speaking about businesses who are providing products for the building sector. So they could provide transparency around their products that actually would, connect to aspects in the certification procedure, right? So it will actually help to understand how good are these products in these specific areas that they connect to in the certification scheme. And now, using that as an analogy, I was wondering if it would be possible to ask the businesses when they sign up, because I understand businesses do sign up by themselves and declare whatever they are being asked to declare about themselves. If in that process you could actually implement these questions that you are then building at, kind of these analysis, the data analysis upon. So yeah, that's a question I would have. And obviously I also do have the question how the, if the data analysis that you presented, if that is accessible for everyone on the platform or anyone curious, or at least the ones who are signing up on the platform, and if the signage to the platform is for free, or yeah, that would be my couple of questions.
So the easy answer is the platform is free. So it's completely free to use, and all platforms, the web, the app is free as well too. We intentionally made it free, Sebastian, because we didn't want price to be an obstacle, right? We're doing this, I say we, as my co-founder, and we're doing this as a public service. We want the information out there, and we felt that and we're not in it to make money, and we felt that that would be an obstacle for. This always raises the question that only people who can pay get to participate. We want everybody to participate. Along those lines, so a business actually cannot come to us and pay us to get in. They don't actually have to. We don't even ask the business for anything, Sebastian. So I'm sorry I wasn't clear on that. But if you, Sebastian, came to me and said, "Hey, I found this coffee shop, on my street that does this," and I look in the information and it looks like they meet some of these boxes, they're in. They don't. The business owner doesn't even need to know. Now, in the future, I got to figure out. I would like them to know that they're in, but for the time being, we're more focused on getting them in, right? So that's not really an opportunity right now to ask them to which boxes do you want to check and what certifications you have. We're not that, frankly, mature yet. In the future, we might be, and that's something that we can look to improve the data. The question for us would be, how much, at some point in time, how much data do we want to collect to make it better, right? And that's a tough question when we're trying to hopefully grow this to 10,000 or 100,000 listings. At some point in time, we want to be the first level of information that you as consumers see, and you say, that gives me enough of a confidence that I think that I want to check out that business a little bit more. And then you can go to their website and they can have all sorts of information, blog posts and stories of their own that they can. We don't try to pull all that into us, because that's now we're duplicating information. We just want to give you enough to say that that's worth my time to go check. The last thing I'll say is if we didn't do that, then your choice is I got to go do the research on my own. I got to go to, most people will go to Google. Who are the good coffee shops doing? That's a hard. We tried doing that. You can try doing that as well too. It's not easy. And no, I don't think anybody's going to do that every time they say I'm hungry or I need to buy a shirt or I need to buy something. I don't think that's the first thing people do.
Yeah, and I guess this kind of points out the curse of knowledge, because just to be clear, like anyone can submit a business. So like I have submitted, like I heard about a Black-owned coffee shop in Atlanta, and I had already met Rich, so I was like, oh, this would be a great one to submit to the platform. And so it was a really simple form. Excuse me, because he's not expecting me, the person who's out in my community or out in the world and seeing like, hey, this business has got something, special going on. I love that they give back to my community. I want to, put this information in this platform, but I'm not going to have to like pull their, tax returns and, do all of this stuff. I just, give the name, location, so you can go on caramelize.org and check out like what the intake is like. Pretty simple. And then Rich, and friends are doing the work of taking just a little bit of information really and doing the rest. So it's easy for people to contribute to this database. So I think that's an important bit of background information. But I'm going to.
Laurie, I didn't answer Sebastian's question about whether this data is going to be available.
Oh yes.
Yeah. What's your answer? I'm happy to share the slides if there's a way, but
yeah. Well, there's going to be a recording of this. If you like, I'm happy with sharing the slides as well. If that would be helpful. Probably, I'm assuming, I don't know, maybe one day it will be an open data set. Maybe we can support Rich in what that means. We at the Civic Hacker Network will support you in creating open data. And I wanted to just, I stopped sharing my screen because we are going to run out of time, and I'm okay with that because I think discussion is, worth every minute I'm not talking. So I want to just put a link here. Hopefully everyone's kind of familiar with Jamboard. So you'll have it in case you need to drop off. Let's see here. Let's see. Oh, my sister is like rolling by the window with the speaker. So it would be great if everybody could, before you have to drop off, we're gonna, I'm still going to go to the next part of our presentation just because, it can be in the recording and you all will get that. So we'll be complete in that regard. But before you go, we'd love to hear from you. Adding a sticky, if you haven't used Jamboard, you can select these and copy and paste like would anything else. Like I'm using Control-C and Control-V because I'm a PC, and edit the sticky notes, right? So that you can just provide a little feedback. After this webinar, are you thinking that are inspired to with some ideas of what you're going to do for CSR efforts in your business, or if you answer the question that you're on the side of the corporate looking to be socially responsible, what are you going to do if you're looking for being attractive to folks who are interested in supporting socially responsible or interested in supporting your mission as part of their program? What are you feeling and what do you think you might be something you need to start doing? And then we have prompts for some other feedback. So would love to make sure everybody drops some stickies there before they go. And I'm going to launch into my portion, which is short, but not 5 minutes. So I understand if people need to drop off. Like I said, there's going to be a recording for you to be able to catch what we ran out of time to really get into. That's my slideshow here. That time when you go into the slideshow and you lose your Zoom controls. Okay, share screen. Okay, great. Oh, okay. So, like I said before, I'm, the director of the Civic Hacker Network, and if you're not familiar with my organization, we exist to empower and connect a globally networked community of people who are using data and technology to create positive social change. And so we do this by offering lots of free events, such as this one, learning opportunities. There's monthly virtual meetups, which we have our monthly, it's the last Friday of each month. So that's happening tomorrow at the same time at 10:30. We have, film screenings, and we respond to the individual needs of our members as they come up, and also offer programming to bring civic hackers together to focus on their mission and take steps to sustain their work, increase their impact. So the Community Impact Accelerator is a program that we are in the process of launching now, where we hope to have cohorts of change makers working together to focus on impact. So the Civic Hacker Network is a nonprofit. We are hosted by the Open Collective Foundation, 501c3, and that is kind of leading to my answer I gave earlier to our questions about, like, well, what side, what's your relationship to this topic of CSR? And I said that I feel like I'm both the C in CSR, looking to be responsible in how we execute our mission. And then also I'm potentially a beneficiary, right? There may be corporates out there. I assume that's kind of my theory of sustainability, is that there are organizations out there who are interested in supporting our mission. And, since we are concerned with broadening the people, the type of people, both geographically and demographically, that are active and engaged in using data and technology to improve their communities. Our work is tied to SDG 10, which is reducing inequalities, and also ties into SDG 16 for peace, justice, and strong institutions. So, definitely we could be kind of the beneficiary of the CSR effort, but of course, this is not strictly for for-profit organizations and not-for-profits, definitely, especially considering how many of them there are in the world. We can't let nonprofits off of the hook for doing their part in moving the world toward the sustainable goals, and we're contributing to their communities as well in a responsible way. So as we were preparing for this webinar, Rich and I, it caused me to do some more thinking about what social responsibility would look like for the Civic Hacker Network, right? And the things that I keep coming back to are awareness and accountability. Awareness of how, the core of what the Civic Hacker Network is doing is aligned with opportunities to responsibly execute on our mission. One example I can think of that I've come across is a funding opportunity where this funder, it's critical to them. You are disqualified if you are promoting any events or activities where meat or animal products are consumed. That's a value that they have, and part of how they're executing on their mission responsibly as a funder, and they're requiring what they fund to follow the same values. So just thinking about that for myself and executing my mission, right? I am looking at the summit, Civic Hacker Summit, is one tangible example that I can think of where the intention around who I select to speak at the summit, and who is represented in that really great opportunity, right, to have your voice amplified, right? That's a place where I can be responsible in how I'm executing my mission. But yeah, I keep coming back to awareness and accountability. So I want to hold myself and my organization accountable for actually making progress toward my desired impact of broadening that base of people who are able to be active in their communities, leveraging the powerful tools of data and technology. So it's the accountability part of CSR for small business that I'm going to close out with us, today. And so we're just going to quickly talk about 3 simple ways, if you're just starting or if you're wanting to be the beneficiary of someone's CSR effort, some ways to keep our eyes on the ball when it comes to the impact that we're making in general, or through a CSR program. As you can imagine from the info that Rich had shared, there's obviously going to be a lot of passion, right? The folks in Austin, very connected to that musician community, and there are really solid missions behind the efforts that small businesses are making to do more for their communities and to give back. So then it's even more worth it, I would submit, to keep score It may seem like a burden, but it doesn't have to be. And in fact, it is part of it. Keep scores so that you can celebrate, we can brag, we can see where we can improve, and most importantly, we can avoid looking around, in 1 year's time, 5 years' time, and being like, okay, so why are we giving away socks again? Like, where did that come from? Why are we doing it? Who's getting them? You want to make sure that you don't look up from your CSR program and wonder where the responsibility part of it was, or even who, right, in the socials. I am going to wrap up today with offering encouragement for you to set the stage for knowing your impact from the very start of your CSR efforts or participation as a beneficiary, and without having to, you don't have to buy extra software or hire somebody to do like a whole evaluation, even though I have a very nice network of people who would love to help you with that. So I have impact tracking in 3 acts. So Act 1. Is to start with what you know. Ideally, you've chosen a focus for your CSR and a direction that is in alignment with your business. And so the same systems that you're using to understand your business performance, to just keep track of where your funds are coming in and where they're going out, can also provide you information about your impact. So for example, we had the example of what you're purchasing, supply chain type information, right? So your purchasing information can tell you if your sourcing is in line with your CSR goals for justice or for sustainability. The demographic info that you already may have, you may already be required to collect some information, or it may be easy, especially if you're in working on a digital product, right, that's outward facing. You may have an easy way to just add some fields into your existing forms so that you can really know how you're doing on an equity initiative. Same thing for your employees or volunteers, right? Even you can look at, well, who is really being represented, and is that reflective of our values? So you can start with what you know, look inward to see the info that pertains to your CSR activity, and see if you can use that. Chances are that there is some information lying around that you already have that can help with understanding and communicating your impact. And the next thing, too, if you will, is to make it bite-sized. Someone recently said to me, I can't save the world, but I can save those who will listen to me. So sometimes people back away from the topic of impact because in their hearts, they may be really resonating with the goal of ending poverty for their community or ending homelessness in the world, right? And maybe folks think that permanent housing for 2 people in the last year that they helped, accomplish, that's not worth talking about. That, the word impact is somehow like going to be wrapped up in some huge, numbers, but those 2 people, those 2 lives are worth talking about. It's a bite, it's a story. And I often go back to the example of community solutions, right? Ending homelessness, 1 person at a time, by name database, 1 community at a time. If you're not familiar with their work, I'll definitely put the link somewhere. They're amazing. And there are others as well doing similar things. That is, a perfect example of just taking those bite-sized moments of impact and keeping track of them and iterating and learning from them. And in terms of communicating your impact, that's something that you're going to find adds up over time for your organization and is very motivating and inspiring. Many development organizations use this kind of strategy very effectively to communicate to donors, such as you'll see like the every $5 gets a child a meal at school, right, type of metric. It's very approachable and makes the concept of your impact understandable for anybody that you're trying to send that message to, including your internal stakeholders, to keep you motivated and continue your CSR program or to improve it. So when you do look around, why are we giving socks? It's like, because we need less barefoot unsocked children, because our theory of change that we bought onto with our nonprofit partner shows that, you know, providing this basic need is benefiting these lives, right? So you won't be just looking around caught off guard with that question of why. And that ties really nicely, right, with the finale, or Act 3, which is to be a partner. You know, you don't have to start from scratch and come up with something on your own. You may want to have your business's CSR effort support a local charity that you already feel is doing great work in your community. That charity would love consistent support, and chances are they know exactly what your support enables. They're out there communicating their impact all the time, and they know what your volunteers mean to their programs or to their impact, and they know, like, you know, what those hours translate to, or what your financial contribution translates to, if that's what you're doing. So, you know, another way that the approach of partnership, right, enables better kind of understanding and tracking of impact is that you can partner within some of these newer CSR platforms you may have been aware of, ones that were pooling companies together, so that when you make your contributions, if you're doing a 1%, you know, type thing, you're able to direct those funds, and the platform is doing the work of communicating with their grantees, basically, and being able to let you know what your every 1 cent does, or every, you know, however many dollars is generating in terms of impact. So you can, you know, partner up and let somebody else do that heavy lifting for you, especially if you're looking to contribute to a more complex cause. And then that's also on the volunteering side as well, like probably more commonly known as, you know, these different platforms where they're offering for employee volunteer programs, and being able to have that platform communicate back the impact that that is having on the mission of the nonprofits that you're supporting. So definitely looking for partners, you know, the point is that they can help you define those bites, and those bites are really easy to communicate and really easy to track and keep you going. So before I thank you for attending, I've already provided the link to the Jamboard. Bye, Rachel. I didn't say bye to her. Before, yeah, we log off here 9 minutes late. I hope that you have found this interesting and useful and motivating in some way. You know, definitely we want your feedback. You can provide it verbally here. It's better if it's documented also in the Jamboard. And Rich and I, you know, are easy to find. You're going to receive a follow-up email with some links and information on how to keep in touch with us. You know, I'm happy to help with any questions, and you know, we had to quickly go over these things, which it was meant to be brief anyway, but definitely there's a whole area of discussion around your data that I would love to have. So yeah, with that, I think that this concludes our webinar. If anybody wants to come off mute with any questions or anything, we'll wait a minute and then let everybody enjoy the rest of their day.
Thank you for all your input and feedback. Appreciate the conversation.